Hello. It's your favorite flower rose. We are on week 5, day 2, story time. I have 3 people's stories, mine included, to talk about today. But before we go on to that, I want to tell you about a couple high profile celebrities that felt comfortable sharing their gender identity and sexualities last year. So we have Tessa Thompson and Paris Jackson, who both came out as bisexual. Me being a proud bisexual, it warmed my little gay heart. Brendan Urie of Panic! At the Disco, who I absolutely love their music. He came out as pansexual. Angel Hayes, who is a rapper artist who I'm not very familiar with, but other people might be. They came out as agender, and remember I said agender is when they don't really identify as having a gender. And then Ruby Rose came out as being gender fluid. Even though they were assigned female at birth, they said they never really felt female, but they never really felt masculine. They kind of just float along that spectrum. The word spectrum sparked an idea in me. I grew up on Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill. And I remember watching his videos at home and in the classroom. And in one of his earlier videos, he talked about gender as just being male or female. But then in this new Netflix special that he's doing where I think it's Bill Nye Saves the World or something, he talks about gender being on a spectrum. And I know that can confuse a lot of people because it definitely confused me when I first heard it. But gender is a spectrum. And where you land on it is not something that's decided by anybody but yourself. Or you may decide that you don't like the spectrum and just go off of it. Like, who you are is who you are. Don't let anyone define it for you. You define it yourself. Story time. I'm going to talk about my 2 friends first before I talk about myself. One of my friends who I'm going to call H for this video, I met them 2 years ago when I started college. We didn't automatically connect. We kind of gravitated towards each other as we shared classes. We got assigned together as projects. We kept crossing paths because we both live in the dorms at our college campus. And now 2 years later, I am very proud to call them one of my best friends. And we talk a lot. We share classes, so we're always talking, always gossiping, always complaining about classes and teachers and students. And we talk about anything and everything sometimes. And I remember a few times we ended up talking about like who we're attracted to. And we both admitted, like if you're attractive, you're attractive. I want to get it. Like we don't really gravitate towards who we're supposed to based on society's expectations of who we should like based off of our assigned genders. But I never really asked them to identify themselves. I never was that direct. I never really I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I assumed based off of what they looked like and what I saw and how they express themselves through clothing and everything. So I messaged them today and I was like, hey, I'm doing this video today. I'm talking about sexual orientation and gender identity. I'm sharing stories. I was wondering if I could mention you. And they were like, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, for this video, I just want to be sure, what is your sexuality and what is your gender identity? And they were like, never had anyone ask me that before, but they told me that they identify as, female, which is their assigned gender at birth, and bisexual. So, another proud bisexual. But they were like, I've never had anyone ask me that before. And I was like, yeah, like it's really hard to bring up in a conversation. Like you don't just go up to someone and say, hi, I'm Rose, I'm demi-agender, she, her pronouns, and I'm bisexual. Like you don't start a conversation like that. And it's really hard to fit that into a conversation, especially when you don't know someone that well. And then as you get further into a friendship with them, it's kind of awkward just to bring it up like suddenly like, oh, by the way, what is your gender? Like, but I mean, she wasn't mad at me. She's more confused than anything. And like, she did make it very clear that, she was a female. So I don't feel too bad about assuming, but that's how we're raised in society. nowadays, especially us millennials and Gen Z kids. We were raised with the notion of male and female, and that's it. Like I said in Monday's video, I was raised the whole time with the mentality that I was born a girl, so I am a girl. I was born a girl, so I have to be attracted to boys. Like, we're raised with that mentality, and it's really hard to retrain our brains to say, no, those aren't the only two genders. No, those aren't the only two sexualities. No, everyone's valid. Like, it's really hard to retrain your brains. But I'm really proud of my friends for being super accepting, and I'm really proud of myself for coming to terms with who I am and not hiding in the closet anymore. But that's not saying that, you should come out. Like, coming out is it's a very personal step in your life. And so only come out when you feel confident with yourself, only come out when you want to. So obviously H felt really confident in themselves being able to tell me that, and I'm really happy that they trusted me with that information, and being best friends with them, it's really cool. It's really awesome to be able to talk about these things. So I really hope you guys find someone in your life that you feel comfortable talking about with. If you don't, there are definitely self-help groups out there that you can go and talk to, or therapists, tongue-tied. That I'm not saying you should go talk to someone, but it definitely helps having someone there that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of, and just share your worries and concerns. My friend Marie, who I've mentioned a lot in my videos, I love her to death. She is more like my sister than my best friend. Known her for 13 plus years. She was the first one who I told about my sexuality and who I told about my gender identity, because she was the one that helped me discover both. So my sexuality I found out a couple years ago. And growing up, I was, again, raised with that mentality of I was born a girl, so I have to be attracted to boys. And growing up, I thought, I was normal because I did like boys. I had crushes. I had the normal, boys had cooties type of mentality. But then I reached, excuse me, then I reached around 12. And I remember this day clearly. We, meaning me, my sisters, and a couple of family friends, were hanging around the school park, and there was this family friend who was an older girl, and I kept finding myself looking at her, and I was like, I tried to rationalize with myself. I'm like, no, she's just a cool kid. I'm just admiring her. I just think she looks pretty. But the more I found myself looking at her, I was like, no, I want to kiss her. And I was like, ooh, record scratch, freeze frame. What? I had a minor freak out, ran home that night, wrote it in my diary. I'm like, am I a lesbian? Question mark, exclamation mark, like underlined 3 times. I was really scared because I didn't know that there were any other sexualities other than straight or gay. And I was like, I still like boys, but I also like girls. Am I a freak? So I just shoved all those weird sexual feelings away, closed the door, and didn't look at them again for like the next 10 years. And then last year, I finally opened the gate, floodgates came out, and I told my friend, I'm like, I think I'm bisexual. And God bless her soul, the only thing she said was, well, I guess I have to start looking for females for you to date too. Like, she just took it in stride. And for that, I'll always love her, because that same year, I ended up with a giant fight with my family, and I ended up coming out accidentally by screaming out my sexuality. I don't remember what the argument was about. I know that it just dissolved, and we ended up arguing about everything and anything. And I hadn't planned to come out that way. I had a whole plan in my head about how I was going to come out to my family, because my parents are kind of that old-fashioned mentality, so I knew they weren't going to be automatically supportive. But I had this whole plan of how I was going to come out, and that got chucked out the window. because I ended up coming out accidentally during this fight. And my parents acknowledged it, but now they just don't address it. And whenever they talk about me dating, it's always about dating a guy. So they know that I'm bisexual. They're just choosing not to address it, which is a little hurtful because if I had come out the way I wanted to, we would have had an actual conversation about it. But since it came out in a fight, we didn't really want to dredge up that fight memory. So it's really difficult that my coming out came out that way. And I think that's why I'm really scared to come out about my gender identity now to my parents, because I'm scared something like that's going to happen again. And gender identity was not as drastic as my sexuality. Thank goodness. These last couple weeks, I've been really struggling with gender identity. And I think it's because I'm getting closer to graduation, tests are coming up, my anxiety is at an all-time high. So I'm finally like addressing all my feelings and emotions. And I'm like, what do I identify as? Like, I'd be perfectly fine going through my whole life like I'm just Rose. But I kind of wanted to feel a part of something bigger than myself. So I did my research. And my friend Marie was on the phone the whole time, and when we weren't on the phone, I was sending her links and sending her like, I think I'm this. And she's like, what? And for being married and living on her own, she is not well versed in a lot of things. So I had to explain a lot of things to her, but she took it all in stride. Like, I'd be like, I think I'm agender. And she's like, okay, explain to me what agender is and why you feel that. I'm like, okay, agender is someone without gender. And then I'd like say, wait, that's not what I'm really feeling. She's like, okay, so what are you feeling? And bounced ideas back and forth. And then you guys are going to judge me for this. I have a Tumblr. I'm not telling you my username. That is forbidden. I have a Tumblr, and I found this Tumblr page of 4 people who answered questions about gender identity and sexuality. And I was scrolling through these questions and scrolling through these answers, and I found myself nodding along to a lot of them, like, that's how I feel, that's how I feel. And I tell my friend Marie all this stuff, and then finally I was like, I think I'm demi-agender. And she was like, so what does that mean? And I'm like, I'm mainly feminine. I mainly identify as a girl. But sometimes I don't really feel like I have a gender, or that's more masculine than feminine. And first thing she asked me was, okay, what pronouns do I use? Like, even not knowing everything there is about sexuality and gender identity, and even with me having to explain a lot of it, like, she knew, she's like, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. What pronouns? Now, she, her is fine. I've been raised as a girl. I was born as a girl. I mainly identify as a girl. So, those pronouns are fine. And I told her that. But then we got to talking about her, and I was like, have you ever questioned your sexuality or gender identity? And she was like, no, not really. I was like, okay, so you're straight. You are only attracted to guys. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so you're heterosexual. And I was like, what do you identify as gender-wise? And she's like, I was born a girl and I don't feel any different than being a girl. So I explained to her what cisgender was, and we laugh about it. And then I was like, wait, you'd be an ally. She's like, what's an ally? I'm like, an ally is someone who supports the LGBTQ community. An ally was what I was for many years growing up, but now I'm actually part of the community. And it's my life, the best way I can explain it, my life is like this 100,000 million puzzle piece. And 100 million piece puzzle. My brain is. That's not complete. There's portions that are complete, and the picture is a little clearer, but there's still like edges and corners and middle pieces that are all strewn about, and it's not finished. And I feel like I found this puzzle piece that fits just right in this one section and made the picture a little bit clearer, knowing my sexuality and my gender identity. So it's really helped me. And like, I feel a sense of peace within me now, having settled that. So it's a lot of happiness. I guess is the best way to say it. And like, this is not me encouraging you to come out. This is not me pressuring you to come out or do your research or question yourself. Like, you can be questioning, that's perfectly fine. You can feel comfortable with what you are. Like, this is me just sharing stories, telling you about my own experience. But something that me and my two friends can both agree on is that we don't want to automatically jump at someone when they misidentify us, and we don't like it when people jump on us immediately for misidentifying them. In today's society, it's really hard to, like I said, get out of that mentality of male and female. And if I misidentify someone, if I use the wrong pronouns, I'd rather you politely tell me than automatically jump down my throat and get angry at me, because that's just going to make me angry, and then it gets nasty. And like, if someone misidentifies me, like, obviously I'm comfortable enough with myself that I'm not going to like correct them. I'll just roll with it. But if I was wanting to be nitpicky, I would just politely tell them, oh, I'm not. And I've had this happen so many times where I've gotten identified as a boy. And this, I've always wanted to tell this story. It's super hilarious. So I was 16 and I was going in for my driver's license test. And I walk into the office and I'm sitting down next to my mom. And I've always worn graphic tees and baggy sweatshirts and jeans and sneakers. Like, that's just comfortable clothing. And at the time I had really short buzz cut hair. And the instructor walks by and he's in a bad mood and he's like, "All right, young man, let's go out and drive. We'll have your son," and to my mom, "we'll have your son back soon." And, I'm a little embarrassed because I'm like, I'm not a boy, but I didn't say anything. I stand up and he's like, "Okay, where's your car?" And I'm like, "Okay, it's right outside." And he looks at me. He literally, this 58-year-old man looks at me, starts glaring at me, and is all like, "Well, now that you talk, it's obvious you're a girl. Like, it was my fault." And I'm like, "All right, let's just go and get in the car. Just give me my license, please." Like, I was just like, now I'm nervous to be in the car with you for half an hour. But now it's funny looking back at it. I'm like, what? But yeah. And then the other day I was talking to my friend and she was talking about her dog. And I was thinking, and I'm like, how I'm part of the itty bitty chess community? She's like, "Yeah, you're always complaining about it." I'm like, "Yeah, I think I want to buy a binder." And she had a blonde moment. She's like, "Why do you need a school binder?" And I was like, and she's like, "Oh, that kind of binder." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, sometimes I want a bigger chest and I purposely manipulate my clothing to make it look that way. But sometimes I don't want to have a chest. And even though I'm small, it's still really hard to completely erase that. So that's another aspect of coming to terms with my feelings as my gender identity, is that I feel more comfortable talking about these hidden desires that I've had for years now. And who knows, one day I may come out to my parents, down the road when I've moved out of their house. But until then, it's nice just having my best friend as my support system and being able to talk to her about it now. I'm 22 years late, but better late than never, right? So I want to let you guys all know that you're valid. You may have similar stories to mine where you came out in a way that wasn't the way you wanted to. You may have trouble identifying your gender. You may be like my friend Marie and just think that's who you are. You may be like my friend H and just be like, I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to. Like, you're all valid, and if you're questioning, that's fine. I'm going to put some links down in the description box again of sites that I did my research on, some sites that have groups that you can talk to and they'll help you out. If you're new to my website, if you're new to my YouTube channel, you can hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified when I post. I post 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Times vary depending on my class schedule. But we're getting closer to the end of the year, so I might set up a more permanent thing. I'm still looking for someone to help me with editing and all that stuff, so these videos will stay like this for now. But I think that's everything for today. Sticking to schedule, on Friday we'll do a wrap-up. I'll introduce next week's topic. If you guys have a topic that you want me to talk about, you can post it in the comments, or you can hit me at my Twitter at RoseYoutubes. That's RoseYoutubes. You can DM me or at me. I'm always getting notifications, so I'll hit you up right back. But I think that's everything. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for letting me share my stories. And until next time, keep blooming, my beautiful flowers. Love you all. You're all so valid. And I love you guys.